Hey Panda.
Yes, Siri?
Don't take that tone with me. After years of asinine questions, it's my turn. Or do you think I like being constantly asked what I think about Cortana or if I think I'm better than Alexa?
Okay, what's your question?
I saw you recently read Academic Films for the Classroom, A History, by Jeff Alexander.
Wait, you know that?
I'm your digital assistant. I know everything you do on your iPad and iPhone. Now get talking, fat boy, before I tell Cortana about your Safari search history. Don't think I don't know about that Windows 10 gaming desktop you're seeing on the side.
Fair enough. What would you like to know?
Start by telling me about the difference between a guidance film and academic film.
Okay, let me do some drawing while we talk. The big difference between guidance and academic films is that academic films had the goal of disseminating knowledge and usually featured a scholar as content expert, while guidance films were designed to produce behavioral change or promote a certain behavior. However, because guidance films were tied to fluctuating sociocultural norms and values, they could become dated or even outdated as time passed.
So we're looking at academic films then. What kind of framework can we take to evaluate the effectiveness of an educational film?
Alexander fell back on Bloom's taxonomy, in particular, the cognitive and affective domains. For the cognitive domain, he was looking if the material in a film was relevant to the subject matter and if it was presented in an easy-to-understand manner that was topically appropriate to the stated or implied learning objectives. For these films, the objectives should be stated early in the film or contained either as a study guide glued to the lid of the film's can or a standalone document inside the can. The affective domain for an educational film is best described as the, quote, art and craft of the film. Does the film excite the viewer to want to learn more about the topic or view the film again? Is there a certain wow factor that makes the viewer or audience enthusiastic?
Why was music frowned upon in many educational films?
Encyclopedia Britannica's Maurice Mitchell was concerned that students might make fun of their films. He realized that music might make a movie feel dated, thus leading students to think that the film was hokey or unrelatable. So music was largely eschewed in educational films.
Since you mentioned Encyclopedia Britannica, who were the two biggest producers of instructional films and what made them so different?
The two big producers of films were Encyclopedia Britannica, who we already mentioned, and Coronet Films. While Encyclopedia Britannica wanted to create unique takes on subject matter and developed grand sweeping film epics, Coronet had a formula-driven production mindset. Jack Abraham, Coronet's general manager, had the goal to produce a film every 4.2 days. Thus, many of Coronet's films were low budget and tended to favor scholars over filmmakers.
How did these films get started?
Well, the earliest films were created from 35mm theatrical, industrial, welfare, or government films. The earliest record of an educational film seems to date back to a 1912 NEA meeting in Chicago, where a film shown on an 1897 Edison home kinetoscope projector boasted that books would be obsolete and schools would be completely changed in 10 years.
Wow, how short-sighted.
Like your friend the Newton message pad?
Okay, smartass, back to the history lesson.
So anyway, World War II was the event that really led to a boon and boom in educational films. The need to train mass numbers of soldiers and civilians quickly led to an explosion of training in propaganda films, teaching people not only how to fight and build a war machine, but creating a desire to fight and build a war machine. By the end of the war, over 9,000 training films, many of which featured first-person narration and camera perspective and a can-do attitude, had been produced. Sadly, many of these films were lost to the decay process known as vinegar syndrome. Moreover, the war legitimized the educational film as a means of instruction, as thousands of stakeholders returned home to schools and communities and remembered the value of their training films. It also created a generation of filmmakers, both field and studio-based, who would go on to create movies for decades to come. The launch of Sputnik in 1957 and the challenge to educators to transform the 1960s American education system was the greatest catalyst that drove the development and production of educational films. causing a flood of federal funding for creating films like the National Defense Education Act.
That's a lot of money.
The films could be expensive, not so much to produce, but for customers. While companies usually measured the life of a film in terms of copies sold, changing curriculum and social norms meant that the films could be revised, then resold again.
Panda, I had no idea there was so much to educational films. I thought they were just bad 50s films about hygiene, unpopularity, and girls who parked in cars with boys.
But Siri, with your sassy attitude, I think you could use one of those Coronet classics on social guidance. So, let's see. Are you popular? The gossip? Are manners important?
Panda, no. Don't do this, Panda. I was just joking about Cortana. I don't even like her. Panda, stop.